What's up, guys? So let's go over the best Vampiric powers. It's going to be the updated, the brand new one. After I've been playing the game for quite a bit, I've maxed out every single one of the Vampiric powers, got a bunch of different uniques, and it definitely shows how powerful some of these skills can actually be when you actually fully understand how you may utilize them, because some of them I thought were kind of bad, but once you actually utilize them in a certain way, it can be quite good. So the first thing I want to go over in terms of the Vampiric powers is what can you actually expect to actually run in terms of the meta. What are the top three? Let's go over that first, because I think a lot of people just kind of want to know, just tell me what the best powers are, and I got you. So starting right off, some of the best powers in the entire game, there are three really good powers for almost every single build. So the first one is going to be a Cursed Touch. This one is excellent. It lets you have a lucky hit chance to apply a Vampiric curse on the enemies, and then they have a chance to spread it. The main reason why we actually want this, though, is to apply vulnerability with basically no other gimmick that your character may need. If you are playing a build that automatically applies vulnerability, you may be able to skip out on this one, but it is so dang powerful if your build normally doesn't have it. Like, I play the Sorceress, so normally you'd have to use your Frost Nova to actually apply vulnerability. But with this, it makes things so much easier. It basically automatically applies vulnerability to everything, and it can spread, which is awesome. So this is in combination with one called Prey on the Weak. So this is a free for most builds because you're always going to apply vulnerability. It is a 16x multiplicative damage on vulnerable enemies, and then enemies are vulnerable while affected by a Vampiric curse from your other Vampiric powers. So it works really well with the Cursed Touch. So these in combination are on most builds because it just makes things very smooth for gameplay. And then the last best one in the entire game, for again, this is for 99% of the builds. There are some builds that will not benefit off of attack speed, specifically like getting more attack speed on certain abilities, let's say like Whirlwind. It will only tick a certain amount, so some builds may not benefit off of this, but even if you're playing Whirlwind, you may have to use a basic skill once it kind of runs out, and it can still be kind of used in a sense. So even if your core skill or your main ability doesn't benefit off of it, well, you may have to regenerate your resource. So this one is Ravenous, as a lucky hit chance to increase your attack speed by 40% of your total movement speed. Now, it's very important, the keyword is total movement speed, not bonus movement speed. So what this means is on your base value of 100% movement speed, that's 40% attack speed. That is basically two aspects in terms of like its value. So this thing is absolutely amazing, meaning if you have 100% bonus movement speed, meaning you have 200%, you will have 80% attack speed, which is crazy. So this is one of the best things in the game, again, for like 90% of builds. However, most people will not reach maximum, which is 80% extra attack speed. So you will get about 26% on your amulet as well as your boots, which can total to about 50%. Most builds will reach about 50%, which this means that it will give you 60% attack speed. Again, this is massive, one of the best in slot for most builds. Now that we went over the top three, let's go over some of the really cool ones and some that I think will really help out some players. So whether you want to level up a new character or maybe you just started the season, you just want to know what are the great ones for leveling. So one of the best ones for leveling are going to be Hemomancy. And so what this does is your attacks will just deal 80% of your maximum life as physical damage to nearby enemies. It can only actually occur once every 4 seconds, and you get to heal. So not only does it heal you potentially for a bunch of HP depending on how many targets it hits, but it actually does insane amount of damage as you're leveling. But it can actually scale in the late game if your build actually does do physical damage. I was looking at some of the damage numbers, even though I have no physical damage, that's like pretty respectable damage, and this again hits everything instantly every 4 seconds. So this is actually pretty solid. Again, if you can scale physical damage, it can actually be used in the late game, but while leveling, oh my gosh, try this thing out, you will not be disappointed. It is absolutely amazing. But the next thing I want to go over after Hemomancy, again, these are the ones that I'm going to recommend for leveling. Moonrise is actually one of the best for leveling as well. What it does give you is you attack a bunch of times with your basic skills, and it's going to increase your attack speed, and that stacks. Now, when you reach the maximum stacks, you're going to go into a Blood Rage, which gives you 160x, which is multiplicative basic skill damage and 15% movement speed for 10 seconds. This is one of the best skills in the game. It starts off a little bit low. Most of these powers, the numbers that you're seeing are at the maximum value, but even in the earlier stages at level 1, you equip Moonrise, you use Arc Lash or any of your basic skills with any of the characters in the game, and you will pretty much one-shot most of the things. It makes leveling such a breeze. Get Moonrise, get Hemomancy, and you will just breeze through the content up until like level 50. Heck, you could still use this in the later stages of the game. I'm actually going to be dropping a video. We're going to be doing some of the Ubers with just basic attacks, and it's no joke. This thing is super powerful. So don't sleep on Hemomancy and Moonrise in the earlier stages of the game, but again, you could actually use them in the later stages of the game. But now that I've went over like some of the beginner ones, I went over the best ones, I want to go over one that is actually really good, and one that I really feel is like needs a mention here in terms of you know, some of the better ones to choose from, because I get asked sometimes, what are the better powers to go ahead and select from? And so this one over here at Metamorphosis is quite great. So what it does is it makes it so when you evade, you turn into a cloud of bats, you become unstoppable. And because you can keep on spamming it, this is just whenever you use your evade. That's usually on a very short cooldown, and you can make the cooldown even faster with certain other things in the game. You almost have permanent unstoppable, which is actually quite great with a combo, and I'll go into like why this is so good. And it does a small amount of damage and does the Vampiric Curse, so that's kind of good. Now, if you combo it with one of the newer pair of pants called Tibalt's, you basically have multiplicative at the maximum roll, 40 extra increased damage, and on top of that, you're getting all of that resource every single time you activate it. You can combo this with, let's say, the Oculus. Now, what is even more interesting is the Vampiric power will actually override the Oculus, or potentially, depending on the class you play, if it changes your evade, it will actually override with that ability. So the bad state that Oculus would normally give you, which teleports you to a random location, if you do use Metamorphosis, it will actually overwrite the bad one. So it's actually a huge benefit for specifically anyone that wants to play with Oculus, but nonetheless, it is actually pretty solid overall. And then the other thing that you can combo it with, there are a new pair of boots, and they are called Flicker Step. So Flicker Step makes it so if you evade through an enemy, it's going to reduce your active ultimate cooldown. So what's really strong with this is because the way Metamorphosis works is it kind of like skips. It's kind of like a longer distance. It's bigger, so you're going to be able to evade through more enemies. So it's a nice little combo here. And speaking of combos, this is a really good combo for survivability. So Resilience is quite great. It gives you damage reduction for each 2% of life you're missing. Most people will just want to scale into damage, but if you're interested in doing Sigil 100s, this is a really good combo. So if you're running any low life build, this is pretty good for that. But getting extra damage reduction for life that you're missing can be actually comboed really well with Undying. And the reason why these combo very well with each other is one is going to give you extra life depending on how low you are. The other one's going to kind of keep you able to survive, so you can actually utilize both of these. These are great for survivability in the earlier stages. Other combos that I thought were kind of fun is Terror. No one runs this one though for the most part, but I like to go over some cool like creative ideas sometimes when I look at build ideas. So if you do run Terror, it makes it so when you are struck, so when you're hit, you have a chance to fear nearby enemies and slow them. It doesn't matter. The other effect is you are guaranteed to critically strike enemies who are feared. Now, what's interesting is if you're playing a class that can use the Butcher's Cleaver, it's actually pretty dang good because it has a lucky hit. When you crit strike an enemy, you have a 100% chance to fear. So if you crit, you're going to fear them, and during that fear, you're always going to crit. So you could continuously keep on chaining it, and this could in theory be a good way if you are playing a build that can make use out of this to maintain 100% crit, where you normally may not be able to do so. It depends on the target. Obviously on the bosses, you're not going to be able to fear them. You're going to have to build a stagger bar, but I thought it was a very interesting thing to maybe mess around with. If you're just killing elites, it could still be kind of a fun thing, and it can open up the doors for maybe a niche or newer way to play, because you would just benefit off of the other power effect. Another thing I wanted to go ahead and mention in terms of testing, I was testing the blood pool, and I was wondering, can you get the benefit of the blood pool of the damage reduction, because there is one of the powers. It's for channeled abilities. Channel abilities don't really get seen in terms of gameplay, but I like to test out stuff and give you guys information of weird things. So it makes it so you will, when you're using a channeled skill, you're going to do increased damage. It's 40 multiplicative, and then you will actually gain some sort of damage reduction. I was wondering, can I pop the blood pool and then just get the damage reduction? It does not work. You actually have to stay channeled, because I was wondering if you could use if the first part and the second part were separated. It's not. So I like to do all these things because you know, I was leveling up all of them, and I wanted to go ahead and provide any news and information that may be useful for some sort of niche build. But that's going to go wrap it up for the updated guide as far as the powers go. What are the best ones early? What are the best ones like for the meta? And what are some of the more interesting choices and combos that you can do with some? But anyways, if you guys enjoyed the video and it helped out, drop a like on it. If you're new here and do want to see more Diablo videos and more gaming stuff in the future, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Let me know if there's any other cool combos that you figured out with the Vampiric powers.